Thank you so much for having me today. I'm really humbled, as I've met so many of you already, to hear about the great work you're doing in your respective communities. So the conference in Charleston just last week, and Phil was there. I was telling folks that while public speaking is a bona fide occupational qualification of being in politics, you got to speak publicly. I've never enjoyed it, and I always, when I get up to speak, I think of the first time I spoke at my home church, the St. John Baptist Church back in Columbia. When I was done, a little guy came up to me. He said, "When I grow up, I'm gonna give you some money." I said, "Well, thank you, son, but why?" He said, "Because my daddy said you're one of the poorest speakers we ever had." So I figured I'd get up and speak when I had something worth saying, and this is an incredibly important issue that goes to the heart and soul of who we are as a country, who we are as human beings, to humanity, and the work that you do is so important. In my role as mayor of the city that I love, the city that I was not born in, but that has really been incredibly good to me for the last 30 plus years. And now in my role as president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, if I say nothing else today, because I'm sure we'll have a great conversation, I think we'll have some Q&A, I want to encourage you. You're doing incredible work here in D.C. Ms. Blank, on the line. You're on the front line, pushing for good federal policy, administration after administration, regardless of who's in the White House or who's in Congress. But I want to encourage you to get equally active on the local level, to take the fight in cities, to pull together strong public, private, philanthropic relationships that help to meet the needs of your people in your cities and metropolitan areas. At the U.S. Conference of Mayors, we love to tout the fact that now 85.5% of all Americans live in cities and metropolitan economies. That almost 90% of all jobs are in cities and metro areas. 92% of America's GDP is created in cities and metropolitan economies. So the ability to find a good mayor or council person, another local elected official that is not shy about using the levers of public policy to help the entire community, there's some real opportunities there. The GDP of New York City exceeds that of the entire country of Russia. Eric Garcetti sits at the center of a nearly $1 trillion GDP in Los Angeles. And city after city, you'll find incredibly motivated men and women on both sides of the aisle who want to do good. We don't always have the subject matter experts that can help us understand how we can do the most good with, yes, a finite amount of resources. And that's where you come in. You are our SMEs. You are our experts. And we need you in our ears constantly, helping us trying to find ways to really raise the body politic, raise the quality of life for all of our citizens. So when you leave here, after beating up on your congressmen and congresswomen, go back home and beat up on your mayor and everyone else, and try to make sure there's some good policy making going on back home. Believe me, Sue knows that she does it every day. When I have a tough issue, South Carolina Appleseed is front and center in helping us address the issue, solve the issue, and sometimes it's just waving the flag and making sure people understand that their city cares and that we're willing to act. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go on so long.
No, but I'm going to remind you of that when
yes,
we're back
ma'am.
home.
Yes,
That's
ma'am.
great. Yeah.
Please do, absolutely.
No, I want you to tell everybody what they need to hear about this,
Yes,
and how
ma'am.
they can go home and make a difference. So one of the things that I know you're very, very passionate about, and your concern is about income inequality and also income volatility among people. You've got a huge audience of, my understanding is there's 1,100 people here who show your real concerns about what do we need to be doing to reduce poverty and hunger in our locations, and what do you think you'd like to tell them about that and the efforts that they can move forward in their local area?
Absolutely. And some of you, if you haven't discussed the issue of income volatility in your communities, realize you're probably still in the majority. I remember Casey Hansen here somewhere, when the folks from Aspen, Epic Institute, Pew, Charitable Trust, and others first came to us to try and find a few anchor cities in which to begin rolling out some practical solutions to dealing with the issue of income volatility, realizing we live in a very different world now. The one that I grew up in, the one that my parents grew up with, where we're fighting every single day for some basic social supports that ought to be a reflection of the greatest and most powerful democratic nation in the world, are no longer there. Government supports, as well as those that we once found from our private employers. And half of American families cannot pay an unanticipated $400 bill. And it's amazing. And as a result, make some very bad financial decisions to make sure that they can just do some very basic things, put food on the table, pay for the power bill, keep the water on. And we decided that we would first, of course, raise awareness of the issue in our community. It's real in Columbia, just like it is across the country. And then also roll out some very practical ideas, some solutions, starting with our own employees, making sure that every employee made well above the minimum wage, making sure that there were some additional tools for our employees to access some capital that they, if they needed it, making sure that some of our financial literacy training that would be available during work hours, that people would actually be paid while they were doing it. We have a fantastic health insurance program at the city, but we also have our own doctor, primary care. Every family in our city family, every employee and their families are able to get primary care for free and pharmaceuticals for free at the city of Columbia. Finding ways, again, to try and make sure that we're meeting the needs of all of our employees, starting with our 2,200 or so employees. And then if we're able to model some really good ideas, then being able to take them out to the entire community. I'm a huge believer in endemic that, in God we trust, everyone else bring me data. And if you have some really good data, then you're also more likely to find some great charitable partners, philanthropic partners willing to support your work, to go out there and do some things. But income volatility is very real. And it's amazing that it is it's irrespective of socioeconomic class. It's irrespective of race and gender. That sometimes even as you're sitting in the bank talking to the employee that's considering whether or not to give you a loan, that employee may also be suffering from the same challenges. So it's real.
And speaking of work, I remember in our own state, there's a talk about putting work requirements now on our Medicaid program. And of course, we're all going to be addressing the issues of work requirements or additional work requirements for the SNAP program, which is very important to so many people in our city and in our state. And one of the first phone calls I received when the announcement came from our governor about work and Medicaid came from you, Mr. Mayor. And I was just so pleased. You said, what do we do about this? And so I thought I would ask you, why did that just resonate with you so quickly when something about a work requirement came up in the context of a public benefit?
First of all, it's when you're in politics for a long time, and I'm still a relatively young man. And by the way, whoever the DJ is here, this 80s music makes me feel young again. So I need the card for the DJ in the room. It kind of struck my heart, struck my soul. I mean, the lack of logic and at times downright inhumanity of some of the things that we hear coming out of Washington and as a result in our state capitals at times, it presses on my spirit, as I know it does each of you every single day. During my tenure as president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, we intentionally stepped into a bipartisan 2-year strategy. It's rare that we have 2 years, but I'll be followed by a Republican mayor from Michigan, and we're focusing on infrastructure, on innovation, and inclusion. And certainly the pillar of inclusion, one major piece of that puzzle is just civility. So the way in which we engage with each other and trying to raise the level of political and public discourse is an important piece of the puzzle. I say all to say that I didn't want to call the idea stupid, but that's what I felt it was. And two is being a bit understated. When I do have major issues of public import that I believe go to the heart and soul and the core of who we want to be as a city. We want to be a city that lives within its values. It's a city that every single way that we can, if it is banning bump stocks or finding ways to get people into new and affordable housing. When we have tough issues, I almost always when I first started 8 years ago on public transportation and mobility, it was a hot mess in Columbia. I call Sue Berkowitz. If it's on Medicaid or Medicaid expansion, I call Sue, and every single time, if it's on affordable housing or someone who just needs help on some random issue that may seem minor to the entire city, but it's incredibly, maybe the most important issue to that one person, I call Appleseed, and they're always there. It made no sense to me, and it's something that I knew that while we might, at that point, be in a vast minority of people who were speaking out in a aggressive way, I knew that our voice carried a little bit more weight, so it was important to step up.
Well, I can tell you it did make a difference when I was sitting in a meeting with the Medicaid director. One of the first things he noted was getting a letter from the mayor. And so I think that that's really important as we're going forward with the SNAP comments for what's going on in Washington, that to have that local connection and have mayors speak out and local politicians as well as the advocates and everyday folk and those who are impacted. So I know we'll continue to work with you on all of that. I wanted to move on to your role with the Conference of Mayors, and if you could tell us what you see their role is in the efforts to end hunger in our country.
We have and I would tell you again, if you don't know your mayor, have a relationship with your mayor and his or her staff, I want to encourage you to reach out when you get back home. The opportunities to take advantage or even start some new innovative programs and to iterate and just make them better over time. We have a fantastic group of food policy staffers who work for our mayors, who speak on the phone every single month, sharing best practices, stealing the very best ideas and trying to move them all around the country, from Madison to New York City. We will issue, I guess, our hunger and homelessness report. Crystal Swan with our staff is here today, later this spring, and I encourage you to keep your eye out for that. A wonderful overview of what's happening all across the country. Mayors are very active and activated right now. We had our winter meeting here in Washington just last month in January, and we had a record turnout, 300 mayors from all across the country, cities large and small, committed to standing in the gap right now as we continue to deal with challenging times here in Washington, D.C., and at times that infecting our state capitals and the ability to get things done that actually help improve people's lives. Cities are ready, willing, and able to stand up right now to continue to not just be incubators of innovation, but to be platforms for human potential. I see in these children's faces every single day the amazing power that they have, the ability that they have to go out and change the world. But children can't raise themselves. It requires not even just their parents, but our collective responsibility, understanding that every child in Columbia, South Carolina is my child. And it's my responsibility to make sure that with Bethany and Jordan Grace, my two beautiful, awesome little ladies, that every opportunity that they might have, that every other child also has those same opportunities. And I will tell you that I'm surrounded by some really fantastic colleagues. We spent time together in Florida this past weekend with our leadership team, about 40 mayors down there, and they're fired up, wanting to go out and do some work and partner with you to help make their respective cities better. And I will tell you, we're also a very, very competitive bunch. So we like competing with each other, and I suspect that if we're able to innovate with some new ideas, we may have an opportunity to talk about those in our future conferences.
Well, and also with the mayors, we know that the child nutrition programs are so important. And if you have any thoughts about what can be done on a local level with the mayors for making sure that we improve the child nutrition programs and make sure that Congress keeps their eye on the importance of them with reauthorization and with making sure funding is allocated appropriately.
Absolutely. No, I believe that each of these are again, crucial, but all to serve as a platform, as a base for what we do. The work, obviously working with many of you in this room on the Farm Bill this year and getting some bipartisan support was important. But SNAP and WIC, I mean, it's imperative that you activate us to support you in all the work that you do. We're finding some great partnerships on the local level. Our school districts, I think we saw in the FRAC report that are making breakfast available to children, poor children in our city. Richmond School District 1 covers our city of Columbia. I think we were 9th, and we hope to be 9th and climbing. So we're very happy with that ranking. We have a very thoughtful, innovative school district that works hard to make sure our children have access to quality, nutritious meals, and we love supporting that work, and we're going to continue doing so.
Right. Yes, we like to do a shout out to Richland 1. They went full district CEP with very little ask and effort. We were so proud of them for the work that they've done. And I have more questions, but I do know that there's a few that have been provided. Am I? Okay. And I've got a few up here as well. Let's see. SNAP is a huge economic boost for cities. Can we better engage business and local chambers to be champions for SNAP, or is there not enough pull for that?
No, I think it's every community is different. And we've found that on some non-traditional issues, we've been able to pull our business community to a point where they can advocate for the entire collective, not just for small business or corporate interests. And this may indeed be one of them. The great thing about a city is that cities, and I think it lends itself to why it's so crucial that you be involved, is that we're natural communities of interest. You know, someone starts a business or a trading post at this former old Native American crossroads, or in our case of our city, a city is founded where the Broad and Saluda rivers meet to form the Congaree, and over time a church goes up and a hotel goes up and a bank gets started. A natural community of interest that cannot be gerrymandered. So we're all not only interconnected but interdependent. And I think it's very easy that once you start explaining to some folks who may not on an everyday basis share or advocate for your interests, how in fact our interests are connected, there's a case to be made. So we'll spend some time talking to the Chamber about that.
Okay, great. I look forward to that. Here's a question on an issue you and I dealt with not too long ago that got quite interesting in Columbia. Virtually every big city in the U.S. is experiencing a major homelessness crisis. Can the U.S. Conference of Mayors sponsor a national summit on this? Not to put you on the spot.
I looked over at Crystal because Crystal knows she's going to have to do it. Actually, she's going. Someone's got to do the work. And I sat with our colleagues. I forget. We spend a lot of time together now. We're in a room of mayors, Republican, Democrat, Independent, from all across the country. And one of the mayors was actually the mayor of Louisville. He's the second vice president of our conference. He'll be president in a couple of years. Asked if we were all seeing an increase, and the answer was every single mayor in the country was seeing a major increase. The other side of that incredible growth we're seeing, revitalization of urban cores, people coming back to the cities, has created a real cocktail of a number of different challenges. If you add in that the opioid crisis and other issues, divestment from mental health services, we have some major challenges. And whoever asked that question in total anonymity. Share your name at some point, and we'd love to talk about the possibility of doing some things. It is a major issue that we speak about in a large format at each of our 2 annual meetings each year, in our winter meeting and our summer meeting. So it might be time to raise it up to another level.
I've got one that's a little bit longer question and then a very short one, because I know I'm supposed to only ask one. But how do you get my liberal member from my not-so-poor district to not just vote right, but to feel and act as passionately as you do on hunger and poverty?
How do you get my liberal member from my not-so-poor district, which means progressive congressperson from rich district, okay? Which means, I'm getting the states in mind and everything else. No, I'm a huge believer that activism without action is really just a conversation. It's just a conversation, and we've got to be committed to acting, to spending some time, even with people who don't necessarily share our worldview. I still believe, and I'm elected independent, but I'm a Democrat. I still believe that 2 good and decent people can look at the same issue and see it very differently. So how do we start a conversation that, yes, is data driven, but is more so driven by our hearts and the human connections that bring us together, and start a conversation that leads itself to action, to actually getting something done to the people who need us and rely on us every single day to make sure they have the opportunity to live up to their full potential, their God-given potential. I think you got to continue to press your members of Congress, and that is not just for this particular member, but all members of Congress. Press them into action. Make sure they have the tools that they need to make informed decisions. And then, if it just doesn't seem like that the member of Congress is getting it, then you got to get more active. I love serving as mayor of Columbia, South Carolina. I've been mayor for 8.5 years, but I refer to the office that I sit in, the physical office, as the mayor's office. It's not my office, because I know that if I were to pass away or kick the bucket, that literally within less than 24 hours there was someone else sitting in that seat. So those are not seats that we own. We are occupying temporary positions of power and authority in this world, and if we're not using them to improve the world in which we live in, particularly for those who need it the most, then we ought not be there. So I'd encourage you to first seek to empower your member of Congress to act on behalf of the people who need him or her. And if that's not the case, then I think you turn the heat up.
And this is a very short question. I'm not sure, it's not on the big card, so somebody I think slipped it up here. Mm-hmm. And it's timely because we're a first in the South primary, and you are fielding every candidate that seems to be coming to South Carolina is asking you for. But this question is, would you consider running for president? Oh, okay. And I didn't make it up.
It's so interesting. As Sue mentioned, my wife actually served on Sue's board some time ago. My wife is a chief judge of General Sessions, so she's the chief criminal judge in our circuit of the state. I've been mayor 8.5 years. Our girls love history. They love liberal arts. They love STEM as well, but they at a very young age understood the forces and phenomena of the universe and the way in which they fit into world history. So some time ago, we started having elections in our home. And I have never been elected president of a house. So I'm not sure if I can win a presidency of the United States if I can't win 100 Island View Circle. So it's a major challenge. I will say this: we've been so fortunate in South Carolina, since we have not yet become a competitive state in the general election. to have the first in the South primary. So to have the very first truly diverse electorate chiming in on selecting both Democratic and Republican nominee for president. And the opportunity to interact with the men and women who are seeking the presidency has been exciting. I will eventually get involved in an endorsement somewhere down the line. But I really see my role right now as being an advocate for the people of South Carolina, to making sure the issues that are important, same issues that you all are talking about, the manifestation of the challenges that we face here in 29203 that represents the northern part of our city. A few years ago, we led the nation in diabetic-related amputations of people not having access to quality food, or making horrible food choices and not taking care of this temple. We still, across our state, with poor children who are living 200% below poverty, black and brown children, infant mortality rates exceed those of children born in Botswana or Panama or in Cuba. My job is to serve as an advocate for those folks and make sure that anyone who wants to be president of the United States and at least wants my support, and those people who support me, they have to be willing to sit on Ms. Johnson's porch and hear the issues that are important to her, and be able to speak in a way that brings us together, because America needs more than anything right now to move forward, being together, and continue being the best hope for the world that we need our children and our grandchildren to grow up in.
Well, thank you, and I'm glad that we don't have to share you with the rest of the country, because we need you in Columbia. And I do want to say how much I appreciate all that you have done to make Columbia the city that we all knew it could be and can be. And I continue to express my gratitude and look forward to all the future work that we'll be able to do.
Can you guys tell we're friends? Can you tell? Yeah. Love you, so appreciate you.